Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're a subscriber, welcome if you're new. Today I'm going to be doing my January reading wrap-up. Alright you guys, so I actually read 10 books, which is more than I've ever read before. I'm not even kidding. That's so much for me. And I hope I continue to read these many books a month, but realistically it may not happen. But I really had a great January reading month, and I'm going to format this video a little bit different than normal. I'm going to start sharing my statistics because I know some of you really enjoy that. So I'll put timestamps for statistics, my actual just wrap up, and then at the end I'm going to be showing you all my bullet journal flip through for January. Here is the front of it, and for example, some of my spreads look like this. So if you're interested in seeing some of these, I will flip through at the end and I'll start doing this in all my wrap-up videos. But let's start with statistics. So according to my own journal, I read 5 horror books, 4 thriller books, and then 1 just general fiction. And so this is my kind of tracker that I did in my journal. But I did start a Storygraph account and they do have some really cool charts, so I'll be putting them up on the screen as I talk about everything. But yes, that is just kind of my own genres. Storygraph does it a little bit different and counts some books in 2 different categories, so that's why I wanted to share what I recorded myself. I'm going to grab my laptop, and according to Storygraph, for genres I read, I will put up here. For my ratings for my books, I will put Storygraph's little chart up here, but my average star rating was 3.73 stars. I read 1 1-star book, 3 3.5-star books, 1 3.75 stars, 3 4-star books, and 2 5-star books. So I will go through these in this video, and I also participated in Winterween. I didn't actually get to finish everything during the actual allotted timeline, but I did finish all the prompts. So when I do my flip through at the end of the video, I'll talk about which books counted for what, and let's just get into it. So the first book I finished in the month was Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, and I buddy read this with Aaron over at Aaron Megan on YouTube. And I technically read half of this in December, and actually, fun fact, I was reading this as I heard New Year's fireworks going off. So I was literally reading as the year switched over to 2021, which I think is really cool and just shows you how I want this year to be just full of reading and reading so many cool books, and this was a really good book. So if you don't know what this book is about, it's about Noemi, and she lives in the 1950s in Mexico, and she receives a letter from her cousin who is married to this man and says, "I'm living here with him and I think he's trying to poison me." So she goes to check on her cousin, of course, because they're close, and she stays at the mansion. And weird things start happening. The atmosphere of this book was definitely my favorite part. I absolutely love the atmosphere. I gave it 4 stars. I will say it is quite a slow burn novel. And I wasn't crazy about the plot twist or kind of the reveal about what was going on, but I still gave it a really high rating because I did just feel so immersed in the atmosphere and just really loved reading something in this era. And I would highly recommend this book for Gothic horror lovers. The next book I read was Verity by Colleen Hoover, and I listened to this on audiobook. And I read this for my secret TBR video where I read Reading by Jess's favorite books. And I had a lot of fun doing that video, and this read was an intense ride. So I gave this 4 stars, and if you don't know what Verity is about, it is about a struggling author named Lowen, and she's actually given the chance of her lifetime, and she is asked to finish a best-selling series by the author Verity Crawford. And Verity can't actually finish the series because she's injured. So she takes up the offer and goes to live with Verity, who is bedridden, and then also with her husband and their child. And things get juicy. It's sort of a romance thriller, but believe me, it is dark, it is twisted, and basically she finds a manuscript that is not meant for anyone to see and starts reading about Verity's personal life and just gets totally immersed in it. And I would really recommend this book. I think it was very gripping. I needed to know what happened, and I actually really enjoyed listening to it on audiobook. The next book I completed was The Patient by Jasper DeWitt. And I really love this cover, by the way. I think it's great. It's a pretty short novel. First of all, it's tiny. Let me show you in comparison to a normal hardcover. So it's tiny, and pages-wise, it is only 205 pages. So I read this really, really fast, and this is about a psychiatrist who goes to a mental hospital and deals with an infamous patient who is very mysterious. No one can fully figure out what's going on and the reasoning of what's happening. All we know is this patient is extremely dangerous. And this is told by a series of posts online from the doctor who dealt with this patient. And I really don't want to say anything else. There were some really chilling and terrifying scenes, and I would just highly recommend this novel. I thought it was so gripping. I flew through it, and I would highly recommend it if you're just looking for something scary and mysterious. Oh, and I gave this 5 stars. The next book I read, or rather listened to, was The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, and guys, I was so disappointed. I gave this 1 star, and I understand that it was written in a time where haunted house stories were not as mainstream, and it was sort of a trendsetter, and things scared people more that were much more subtle back then, but I was not scared at all. So if you don't know what this book is about, it's about 4 characters who go to this mysterious, notorious Hill House, and paranormal activity starts happening. But honestly, it was just so anticlimactic. I was not scared at all. It was just very boring. And I'm sad to say that because I know Shirley Jackson was such a influential author and really kind of paved the way for haunted house stories, but it just didn't work for me. So I gave it 1 star. The next book I read, which was my other 5-star read, is I'm Thinking of Ending Things. And this is the most unsettling book I've ever read in my life. I really don't want to say much about it if you haven't heard of it or haven't read it, but basically this is about a boyfriend and a girlfriend, and they're visiting they're driving rather to the boyfriend's parents' house on the secluded farm during a snowstorm. And you hear the girl thinking about ending things. And I don't want to say anything else. Go into this. I will warn you, you will be confused. You won't know what the heck is going on. And honestly, for how confused I was so engaged. I needed to know what happened, and I would just highly recommend this book. This is something that really has stuck with me. I would really recommend watching my friend McKay. He did a YouTube video over on his channel, McKay's Book Club, and it was just exceptional. He went into such depth about what was going on in this book, and I just highly recommend that video and this book. Next book I read was The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins, and I had really high expectations for this book, and I ended up only giving it a 3.5 star because it was just a little bit disappointing for me. So, if you don't know, this is actually a Jane Eyre retelling, and it's about a woman named Jane, of course, who is a dog walker in a very, very wealthy neighborhood in Alabama. And she runs into Eddie, who is a recently widowed, very wealthy man. And they kind of have insta-love, which I don't like, but they end up moving in together and having a relationship with one another. But Jane sort of gets immersed in his deceased wife's story and learning about her, and things are eerie and unsettling. I thought the plot was good and I liked the plot twists. I was just not interested in the kind of rich neighborhood characters, and I just wasn't super invested in any of the characters. I didn't really like them that much. And so that took away from it, and it was just a little slow for me. The twists were good, but overall it was just underwhelming. The next book I read was Pet Sematary by Stephen King, and I gave this book a 3.75 star rating to 4 stars. So I always sort of have mixed feelings about Stephen King books because they can feel really long to me, and this book really had a slow start, but once the action actually picked up, I really did like it. So I buddy read this with Alicia, and I will link her channel, Alicia Guzman. But we did a live show on it, and it was so much fun talking about the book with her. And I do think that once it picked up, it was a really wild ride and really just kind of exploded in Stephen King horror. But I will say it was a slow burn. And if you don't know what this book is about, it's about the Creed family, and they moved to an old rural house in Maine, and they're pretty isolated. And they find out that there is a pet cemetery in the woods near their house. And I love this quote, "Sometimes dead is better." And that's what they learn in this novel. So it deals a lot with grief and how people experience grief and the different ways people experience tragedy in their life. And I think Stephen King really did an exceptional job showing different reactions to tragedy. I will say I would not recommend this book if you are dealing with grief as of now. I mean, it is just probably going to be too disturbing and emotional for you. But if you can handle it, I would suggest this book. However, I don't think it was very scary. I think the ending was really creepy, but overall this book was more of a character study on how people handle grief. So with that being said, I think this book was still very well written, and I would recommend it. The next book I read was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and I rated this a 3.5 stars. And I read this along with Read by Andy's Discord, and I also participated in her live show on her channel, so I will link that. But this book is about a library between life and death. And basically there is an endless amount of books, and you can kind of open them and step into other possibilities that could have happened if you did not experience your regrets. So this book kind of reads like a self-help book, and honestly I was a little bit disappointed by it. There were some ideas that really stuck with me. Of course, you can see I have some tabs, not as much as normal, but I do have some tabs, and I really did like certain aspects of this book. But I wanted it to go deeper, and I just didn't get all that I was expecting from it. So I would still recommend this book. Please look up the trigger warnings. And I really enjoyed the imagery in the library. I thought that was really cool, but I was, once again, just a tiny bit disappointed by it. All right, the next book I want to talk about is The Bear Who Wouldn't Leave by J.H. Moncrieff. And here it is. I hope you can see it on my Kindle. Also, check out this cute pop socket. It is a latte and latte art, and I'm obsessed. Anyway, this book I rated 4 stars. It was really good. It was actually more of a short story. It was only 90-something pages. But this book is about a young boy whose father recently passed away, and his mother has moved on to another man, and that man is very mean to him and also gives him this creepy bear. I don't want to say much else. It was scary. I really had some moments of actually being genuinely scared, especially towards the beginning of the book. I read a lot of it in the dark, just lying in bed, and I would really highly recommend this book. It's super, plot driven because it's such a short book, but there are some creepy things that happen, and I would highly recommend it. Okay, so I hope my framing isn't too messed up. Actually, my camera just fell. I bumped it, and yeah. So I'm hoping that everything is good. If it's not, I apologize. But the last book I want to talk about is Body Read I read with Hillier over at Melted Books on YouTube, and it is called Wonderland. Here's the cover. There we go. I hope you guys can see it. Again, sorry about the framing if it changed. But this book is about a detective who is trying to solve cases where boys are disappearing at this creepy amusement park. And I gave this a 3.5 star. It was disappointing for me. It had such a good potential. A creepy, amusement park, like that cannot be a better setup for a book. But unfortunately, I wanted more creepy, and I just didn't get that. And so although the story was good and it was a good detective story, I thought it was just a tiny bit too long, and I wanted some creepy elements. When I got the creepy elements, I really loved them, but I just wanted more of them. If you'd like to stay around to watch my bullet journal flip through, then feel free to do so. But if you're going to sign off now, thanks for watching my video. I can't wait to see you in my next. Bye.